Hello and welcome to the Believe Crew podcast. The business is you. I'm Jamie White, founder of Believe Crew and your host. Let's jump right in. Hello, welcome to today's podcast episode. And today I'm interviewing Amy. And Amy, I would love to hear you share your version of the story of who you are, your business, and why you're here.
I'm Amy Pierquet. I own Waterfront Graphic Design. I have been in business for 22 years. So I've seen all kinds of changes, all kinds of evolutions in business, how businesses run. And maybe I could share something to help someone go, hey, she did it. I could do it too.
I love that. Absolutely. I definitely want someone to leave this podcast with that in mind. So if we think about that, then usually I like to dig into like, what are some of the invisible walls that you ran into as an entrepreneur that you didn't expect to? And how do you recognize now the breakdowns before the breakthroughs? What are some of the things that come up? How you help your clients? Any of that stuff is all the things I love to dig into, but specifically with the idea of like us ending with this feeling of like, you could do it too. And
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's kind of starting with the end in mind. It's my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I want to kind of ask the question before we get too far down the entrepreneurial mental health combination.
I am the main person. I do have an assistant that helps me with kind of the running of the business, not necessarily the work. I have tried hiring people to do some work, and to be 100% honest and transparent, I was disappointed in that, and so were my clients. So if I can get some of the day-to-day running of the business off my plate, I can do a much better job for my clients, helping them with their websites, helping them figure out what to do. What do I do next? How do I implement that into my website? All of those things are what I really excel at. The day-to-day operations of how do I, manage the CRM, or how do I manage this? Not exactly something that trips my trigger. So finding someone else to handle all of those little odds and ends has been literally a godsend to me.
I love that, because ultimately it sounds like you're embracing the fact that you're the artist, and really, like, obviously in Believe Crew, we work with a lot of coaches. And so they're really artists in a different way, and they don't want to do the behind the scenes. Like, we talk about that all the time. Like, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and somebody else in Believe Crew, Rachel, loves the behind the scenes. And she's like, I'm not called to be a coach. You guys do what you do well, and I'll help you.
Yeah. And sometimes I even like to say that I'm kind of like a coach too, in many ways. People come to me.
Exactly.
Either I need a website, or I've got this website. Okay, I think it sucks. I'm embarrassed for people to see it. I hear that all the time. Right? I'm so embarrassed for people to see it. I don't even want to hand out my business card, and I don't. So helping them through the process of what do we need to put on the site? Like, they may have an idea of what they need. We sit and talk about it, but then I do coach them in,
bring it out.
This is what you want. Here's what I recommend. Here's what I think you need to go. Maybe what you need to concentrate on instead of that. Just because I've worked with so many people, I've worked with coaches myself, and, just helping people through the process and being in business for so long myself, I'm kind of like, okay, that's a great idea, but out of all these years, I've never seen that work. Why don't we try this? That hasn't worked for anybody that I know. So why don't we go down this road instead? I mean, I'm more than happy to try it, but because it's your business, but my recommendation is XYZ. Right. So
we've talked a little bit before where, because you're representing someone's brand in doing the website for them and designing it, like, you really have to get to know them. And I think, if I remember right, you said you kind of get like a download on who people are, and sort of this intuitive, process of like, okay, this is what I heard them saying. Would you consider yourself to be intuitive in the process?
Absolutely. I've really come to realize that when I meet with somebody, the questions that I ask, and I do have an online questionnaire that I have people fill out before they start working with me, either it be a logo design or website design, or even just a brochure, right? They fill out that. And then I sit down and I do like a one-to-one or a Zoom call or anything like that. And I start asking a lot of questions, and I do get a really strong sense of that person, what the personality is, what they're looking for. And a lot of times I go with my gut. And
Mm-hmm.
when I follow through on that initial thought of this person is this type of person and would really like this, I'm
Mm-hmm.
right almost all the time, right? Like it's like a 99% success
That's
rate.
awesome.
I get comments from people like when we're done with the site or we're done with something. Many times I've gotten the exact comment of, wow, you really got me. Right. So is that intuition? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. You're creating a vetting process along with using your intuition, like, right? Like the questionnaire and having that one on one conversation. You're finding out if you're the right fit for working with that person. And then,
Hmm.
I mean, it sounds like, is that what you would agree?
That is, yeah. I mean, whenever you work with somebody, it is a two-way street. They're not interviewing
Mm-hmm.
you only, you are interviewing them. And I may not be a right
Right,
part
right.
for that person, and I'm going to know it right off the bat that okay, I'm probably
Mm-hmm.
not the right person for you because of XYZ, whatever the reason is.
Okay,
So,
so I'm going to go
mhm,
back farther in your business.
okay.
20 some years ago when you started, did you have a similar process? Did you just know right off the bat, this is
Nope,
how we're going to do this?
absolutely not. In fact, the intuitive part actually became very apparent in the last 5 years only. So
Mm,
because I actually started doing some personal work on myself, I stopped
mhm,
kind of working so much with coaches. I was like, no, I got to fix me, right? There's some trauma in me I
mm.
needed to fix. So I worked on that. And then once I started dropping a lot of my fears and self-doubt and stuff like that, all of this stuff just became very apparent, very clear.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I knew which way to go.
You're telling me that for almost 15 plus years, or let's just say approximately 15, no, do I have the math right? Yeah. Approximately
It's,
15 years, you looked to others to find out what you should, quote unquote, do to run your business and to do things. And then you stopped and you decided, I'm just going to work on me. And you started getting clarity on where to take your business because you were working on you,
yep,
because you already knew inside you what you wanted and you were trusting yourself more.
that's it. That's it exactly.
This is
Um,
huge.
It's huge because we do as entrepreneurs, and I see it all the time when I'm talking to clients, they question themselves constantly. And when you start questioning yourself and you're doing it all the time, you got to start looking inside and going, why? Because there's a reason for it. And once you start looking into the why am I constantly doubting myself? Why am I constantly second guessing myself or having limiting beliefs or I'm not good enough? That's something else that comes through entrepreneurs' heads all the time because I hear it almost daily from clients that I talk to. Oh, well, I don't know. It's probably not good enough or it's not that or it's not that. It's all of that is what's holding them back. So mindset, right?
Yeah, I've been noticing even for myself, the closer that I get to what I really believe I'm being called to, and the closer that I get to knowing what I want, the more there are belief systems that need to change. And we've started doing some work in healing to understand obligations and, that like I need to literally rewire my brain here because otherwise I'm not going to get past this. It's just not. We're going to be stuck here for a while.
Well, whenever I get a feeling, I've changed those first 15 years. There was a lot of self-doubt, a lot of questioning, a lot of everything. But now, whenever I get a feeling, either negative or whatever, right? Like if I get angry, if I get doubty, if I any negative emotion like that, instead of looking outward or blaming someone else for that emotion, I turn it and I look within. And I'm like, okay, what do I need to fix? Because I'm getting angry or frustrated for a reason, and it's actually your emotions are more about you than it does about the person that you're angry at or frustrated at. So you need to do that work. So I always turn it within now, and I go, okay, what is this telling me? because that's what it is. It's telling you that something needs to be fixed. So if you're
100%.
frustrated in your business, stop looking outside. Yes, maybe hire a coach or work with someone to work on things that you don't understand, like budgeting or things like that, right? But when you're having feelings come up about your business, that's 100% all of you, right? So you just got to look
Yeah.
within and go, okay, what is this really telling me? And then people don't like to do this, but you have to sit quietly with yourself and the answer will
Mhm.
come. So,
And then being willing for that answer. Yeah.
mhm.
A lot of times when I'm blocked from an answer, yeah, I love to say when people say, I don't know, I'm like, and you do, it's just scary. like,
You're not
I
listening,
don't
or
know.
you're kind of rejecting it a little bit, or your fear
Yeah. Yeah.
plays a huge role
Yeah.
there too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's times I don't want to work on stuff. like it was serving me for a while. Right. And so it
Mhm.
worked in a different way. Now you're saying that your process in your business for you is to work on you,
Mhm.
and that helps grow your
Well,
business.
I've been in business for 22 years. I understand the process. I know how to build a website.
Hmm.
It became very
Hmm.
apparent to me 5, 6 years ago, whatever, that it wasn't the fact that I didn't know how to do it. It was that I was questioning my
Hmm.
ability to do it. And every time I think back on who I was back then, and I think every time that I met with a client, they didn't hire me, it was probably extremely apparent to me my low self esteem.
Right.
Why would
Yeah.
they hire me if I don't feel confident in my own ability? Even though I definitely knew what I was talking about. It didn't come across like I did.
So if you knew that there was an entrepreneur that was just getting started anywhere along the process and they haven't really thought about how some of the things that they're running into could be the work that they need to do on themselves, how do we even define how much investment in time and money or resources that it takes? I mean, like everybody's in a different place.
Yeah.
I heard someone tell me one time that it takes 5 years and 150,000 for coaches to build one of those courses, one of those great money-making courses that people talk about online for coaches. And I I feel like that's kind of the number for me. like in terms of doing the work, I don't want to scare anyone, but I started, with 2,400 for the year. That was my initial investment in myself. And it was probably
Mhm.
8 years ago. So then when I started to up the ante, it just kind of kept going up.
Well,
Time,
I mean,
money,
I couldn't
resources.
tell you how much I've spent on it. But
Hmm.
I know that when I came across somebody, they offered the price tag of $5,000. And when I went, yes, sign me up, I knew I was ready,
Right,
right? Because
right, right,
$5,000 didn't scare me. Like now, if
right.
it's something that I'm not, maybe I'm not sure of, maybe I'm not, whatever. I don't know if this is everybody's kind of journey, but when I realized I was tired of feeling a certain way, I was tired of
Hmm.
playing the I'm the biggest victim on the planet role because I was there.
Wow.
Um, I got tired of that. I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. And I want this to stop now.
Hmm.
When I started
Yeah.
working with my coach, she's like $5,000 6 months. I was like, sign me up because I was so done being like
Hmm.
that. Because I'd spent most of my life in such a
Yeah.
victim mentality that I was like, no, not anymore. And it doesn't mean that I don't slip into it every once in a while, but one, I'm not there permanently.
Hmm.
And when I do slip into it, I notice it immediately and
Right,
I get myself back out of it because I'll only be in there for like a few minutes because, oof, I
right,
don't
right,
want
right,
to be there
right.
anymore.
Yeah. When I was first doing the breakdowns, before the breakthroughs, it was like a complete meltdown, entire day, just take the day off the calendar, clear the calendar. And now it's like, oh, I feel something coming. I'm like able to work through it. It's not that the bumps don't come. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that the,
Let's go.
moments aren't there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how we work through them now is differently.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about like it sort of like it no longer became about the cost. Like you knew you were ready, you knew it was worth it. Like what does it take to get over this or to get through
Mm-hmm.
this or to become, a different version of myself? I mean, basically what we're saying is we're not the same people that we were 5 years ago because we've grown in crazy ways that are hard to explain even.
Well, and I think about it too. It's people look at it as, oh, that's $5,000 out the door. Well, first of all, that's investing in you. It's investing on how you feel, how you live your life. I have a
Mhm.
completely different outlook on life. Everything that
Mhm.
used to be important to me that was not really important is no longer important, right? Like other things are
Mhm.
more important. I live a much more happy, fulfilled, like just amazing life. And to me, the money that I've spent on working on me, 1,000 times worth it. I would rather be where I'm at.
Yeah.
And never mind the fact that every one of these people that I worked with, they said, once you start to work on yourself and you get rid of your traumas and all these negative beliefs and stuff, it will start to show up in your business too. And they're not wrong,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Because people meet me
Mhm.
now and they're like, I love your energy. I love talking to you.
Yeah.
I love interviewing you. Like, I love this. I love this. And that wouldn't have come, right? So
Wow.
working on yourself does impact your business in a positive way.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we take this and kind of combine it with the thought of what you're trying to create for clients, when you're trying to create that marketing, that branding piece, if they haven't done the work, it's sort of like we're going to have to redo the website in a couple of years. But maybe that has to happen anyway. Like as they do the work, we become different people. Yeah.
Yeah. And typically it does if they are actively growing their business every 5 years or less, depending, right? Your business is going to grow and shift. So as your business grows and shift, you should be addressing your marketing and your message, because maybe you started your business and then you hired me like 3 years after you started your business, and we built a website. Well, 5 years down the road, if your business is in the same place it was 5 years ago,
Hmm.
you're probably not doing something
Wow.
right? Because
Yeah.
you should be evolving and shifting and maybe niching down and finding out who's my target market. And because a lot of people start their business, when they start their business, they're like, oh yeah, I can work with anybody. But
Yes.
as
How did you
as you're
know?
because I've seen it over. Oh, well, first of all, that was me, and then
Yeah. Right.
I've seen it over and over and over. But then
Yeah.
as you get into your business, you start to realize either no, this is my target market, or I prefer to work with these people. That's two completely
Hmm.
different thought processes, but I
Right.
prefer to work with X, Y, and Z. Well, then, if as you change and evolve that, if the message on your website no longer resonates with that group of people, it's
Hmm.
time to do some work on that site, right? Time to work on the message, time to work on what you're trying to say in order to attract that right person. So, yes, everything, I mean, as people, we are constantly evolving, but as should your website.
Hmm. So, what are you seeing right now when you're working with entrepreneurs and just in general, different from maybe in the past and maybe not even that long ago past? Like, what's different?
The one thing I've definitely seen, even just, I'm going to say before the pandemic, a lot of people did not put weight into their website. It was
Mm.
kind of, it was almost like a back burner item. So to find
Like the
someone that would
business
be,
card that really wasn't gonna.
yeah, it was like, yeah, it's there, it's fine, whatever.
Hmm.
Now people are putting much more priority into it. The
Well,
amount of websites that I have done in the last 3 years where it was, and I'm saying old website, like 10 years old, right? Anywhere between five
hmm.
and 10 years, or even longer than that. Um, and then they're finally going, I really need to. But it was this shift that the pandemic caused, that
That
all of these
virtual world.
people, all of these people are like, yeah, I really need to do it. So I've been
Hmm.
doing taking some really old websites lately.
I love it.
And the before and afters are literally insane.
I
Yeah,
love it.
because when you're talking about 10 years ago, you're talking about like not a lot of graphics, maybe some text, not
Hmm.
pretty at all. Like it just didn't have anything to draw people in. Plus, it's also not mobile ready. So, um,
Right. Mobile's huge.
it's huge. When you've got more than, I mean, close to 60 to 70% of the people using mobile, if it's
Right.
not, if it doesn't work on mobile, you're missing a huge chunk.
Right.
of the audience. But I would say that was probably the biggest shift I've seen.
Hmm. What we've seen with
Mhm.
Believe Crew in people using the website is like, we don't lead with the website, right? When we're talking to people or,
Mhm.
having conversations, we're not like, oh, go check out our website. But what we're finding is that as they learn more about us, as they connect with us, then they go to the website to sort of verify, clarify, anything that we haven't said that doesn't make any sense. It's like, does the website explain it? And I remember in the previous businesses that I was in, I wanted the website to answer any of the questions that customers would call us with so that we could access the information on the website, because what's better designed than a website? Like trying to find the information in a different printout or handout or some online, I was like, just put everything the customer is asking on the website. Like, let's just answer our own questions.
And I've kind of found that too, that, people, maybe they find out about you, they find you on social media, word of mouth, anything like that. And people are coming to the website to kind of vet you out. Like, is this person legitimate? Are
Right.
they,
Yeah.
how,
Yeah.
how professional are they? Are they fly by night thing? Or they've been around for a little while? It's more kind of
Mhm.
finding out more about you.
Yeah. Yeah. When you think about you and your business, what are some of the things that you think about investing in for yourself as a business owner and your business over the next couple of years? Like, what are some of the things that might be on the horizon?
A little bit more work on myself. I
I
really,
just wanted to add, I would love to normalize personal growth and personal development as a line item, as an expense on profit and loss sheets for, for business owners. That's my
it's
mission
so
right
important.
now.
It's so important. I came to realize that I still have a little bit of fear guiding me. And in
Mm,
fact, I just signed up for another course to kind of work through figuring out, like, I know the fear's there, and I think it's still holding me back in my business just a little bit, but I'm not quite sure what the fear is. So I need to work with someone and kind of work through figuring out what it is so that I can then address it. And then I feel like once this fear blocker is gone, my business will go to even the next level. So
yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful that you have that awareness, beautiful that you're willing to make that investment, and beautiful that you understand it's here, it's real, and I'm not figuring it out on my own. I went to a forum one time. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Landmark Forum. They do something where people stand up in front of the room and they help somehow bring out what people's fears are, or like they call it a racket. And when people are standing up there, they're pointing out the racket from the stage. The hosts are, but the people have no idea that this is their blind spot. Like, you can tell they're not
mhm.
trying to cover it up. And the rest of us in the audience don't have that same belief system, and so we're like laughing because it's so obvious to us, and yet they can't see it. Like, what? It's right
And
there.
that's actually true, because the more work that I do on myself, the more that I can actually see what's holding other people back too. Right? Because you can see their fears, or you can, like, they'll say a sentence and you're just like, wow, that is so holding you back. And
Yeah.
I've counseled some of my clients through fears. I had a client of mine, she's up in New York, most amazing rock star of a woman that you'd ever meet. She's funny, she's just smart. Um, and I made some advice for her website. One of them was to create a video for her landing page, right? And so she created this video. She's been in, like, Hollywood a little bit. Like, I mean, this woman's a rock star. She's done it all, right? She tours for her comedy, like everything, right? So her on stage presence, her video presence is like on spot, but she doesn't think so. She showed me the video and she's like, well, I don't know. I don't know. I think it just might be too much. It might be too much. I don't think it's good because it's too much me. I'm too much out there. And I was like, okay, all right, let's have a talk. Okay? Because first of all, your ideal clientele is going to love you. Is going to resonate with your, first of all, amazing energy, right? Why would you want to attract people that are attracted to the pared down you? And she's like, well, I don't. then think about what you just said. And she's like, oh, well, so this is fine then? And I'm like, yes, because the people that are going to resonate with that energy that you are putting out there is going to hire you because they're like, wow, I want to be like her, right? I want to coach with her. And once I taught her that, she's been going gangbusters because now she's not questioning herself anymore. But I had to point it out to her for her to see it because she didn't see that she was holding herself back. But she was questioning that she was too much. And I'm like, no, you're not too much. I love that you, because that is what makes you you and what makes you amazing. Do not squash that. And I think as entrepreneurs, we are just like that woman where we are constantly squashing ourselves. I'm not good enough. Yeah. I'm too much. I'm this. So if you ever hear yourself say any sentence that even remotely sounds like that, you are squashing yourself. Just pay attention to your own inner thoughts and start, maybe make a journal, start writing them down. Just start paying attention to what you're saying to yourself, because there's probably a lot of negative thoughts in there. And those negative thoughts become beliefs, and those beliefs are holding you back.
I love it. I feel like just saying, preach it, sister.
Preach it. Hey, we all didn't go through all of it to not share it.
Right. What you said so beautifully. And I just want to give that a moment of those things that we're saying to ourselves, especially the things that are, I'm not enough or I'm too much. It's on both ends of the spectrum. And neither are true. This is a situation where the best version of us is what people want to see. And yet we've been told by someone, like, who's telling you that, right? Whose voice is that saying you're too much or you're not enough? Chances are it's someone else's voice, and maybe they heard the same voice in their head. And it was someone else telling them that. But as we step into who we are, because who determines whether we're too much or not enough?
You heard it somewhere. Someone else said that to you, right? Or that you're not important. I have a limiting belief. It's still there a little bit, guys. It's not completely gone. That I'm not good. I'm not good enough. And I think somewhere back in my childhood, and I've already uncovered quite a few of the instances, I felt like I wasn't important, right? Like there was things that happened in my childhood or things that were said to me that made me believe that I just wasn't important. I didn't matter. Basically, I didn't matter is the limiting belief. And I've been working on that one, and I still struggle with it because, even to this day, if I'm not invited to something or I'm not whatever, I still, then that little thing, it just creeps up. And then I'm like, nope, I'm aware of it now and I can shut it down, but it still tries to creep up. That, okay, you're not important. See, this is evidence you're not important, right? And
when we haven't shifted the thought yet, when the belief hasn't been literally rewired, you could say, then we look for proof that it's true. And so, like my favorite line when I point out a belief system to someone that isn't quite ready to change it, they're like, well, I can give you proof. Here's my story. I know the proof exists that you were, not important or something like that. There's proof. But the problem is we've been looking for proof to prove this bad belief. And what happens if we change the belief to believe that you literally are super important, or, just letting it go, that obligation to not be important, or it's a sin to be important, something even at that level. If we shift that, then our whole perspective changes. Yeah.
But really the first step is just becoming aware of the fact that it's there in the first place. That's half the battle.
Absolutely.
Because most people walk around not even being aware of the fact that they have this thought going through their head, or that thought is actually controlling their life.
There's a book by Anthony DeMello called Awareness. He also has one called The Way to Love. And I think I personally like the audio version. I know someone else that doesn't. And he just says, everyone's asleep. They're just asleep. Like
It's
the first
true. I
battle
mean,
is awareness.
if I
Yeah.
think back to before I started working on myself, I don't recognize that person. I'm just
Mhm.
like, wow, what a miserable life did I leave? Like I lived like so horribly. And not that my life was like horrible, but my mindset was so negative.
I'm curious what words you remember saying back then that maybe you don't say anymore. Because I know for myself, I use the word frustrated all the time. I don't say it anymore. I'm most of the time not frustrated because if I do recognize an emotion like that coming up, then I deal with it because I know, like you said, I got to look inside. There's a belief system I got to change.
Hmm. I think the biggest thing for me was kind of like I said, I'm not important. I'm not good enough.
Mm.
Um, and it was all a lot of
So,
self doubt. Hmm.
mhm.
So not being good
So you
enough.
wouldn't have necessarily had words that you were saying. Like I'm a more verbal person. I was expressing this stuff to people and I'm
It
just
was
like, "Oh my word, I'm
more.
so frustrated." And I was a blamer. I was a blamer.
I definitely was a blamer. I pointed the finger at other people a lot when I got hurt. Um, Now, it doesn't mean that that person didn't hurt me because they did, right?
Exactly. Yes.
In very
Yeah.
strong
Yep.
ways sometimes. But, when people call you really nasty names or yell at you or anything like that, that's hurtful. But instead
Yeah.
of going, yeah, that's actually their emotional issue, not my emotional issue. That doesn't have anything to do with
Yeah.
me, which
Yeah.
is where I go now with it. When someone says something, when they call me a bad name or whatever, I'm like, ooh, yeah, what comes out of your mouth is in your heart. Like, you know, and I just kind of walk away and I go, I wish the best for you. Like, this is not me. But in the past, I used to take it as like personal, like this is me, and then
Wow.
I would be down for days or weeks or months or whatever, you know.
Right. Right.
Um,
Giving someone else permission to kind of hold control over your energy in a way.
it was horrible. It was horrible. Like
Wow.
I felt literally uncontrol, like I had no control in my life, and it
Mm.
felt like a little spiral at times.
Well, that's heavy.
Hmm.
Are
Yeah,
you saying that it's literally
lighter. It's like
different?
so
Like
much
it's
lighter for me.
actually,
Hmm.
wow.
Yeah, and I can be around other people, and I can pick up the negativity like crazy.
So you're probably more of an empath anyway, like you just sense people's
I
emotions and
sense things. Yeah,
feelings.
I always have.
Mhm.
Yeah. When I was
Mhm.
younger, I love to tell this story once it became very clear to me. Like, I remember thinking this a lot when I was a child, but there's one specific time that popped into my head when I was 12 that, I could walk into a room. I knew when someone was upset or sad or mad or
Mm.
whatever, and I would go and comfort that person. And like, especially if they were sad, right? Like, I wanted to,
Wow.
make them feel better. And whenever I felt sad, or mad or any emotion where I wanted comfort, no one ever came to me. And I
Yeah.
believe that my belief of I'm not important stemmed from that
Right. Absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
I felt that because no one came to me when I felt bad, I was just like invisible or whatever. And then I learned later that, okay, you might be an empath and you pick up on that kind of stuff, and the rest of the population doesn't. But until I learned
Right.
that, I thought it just meant that no one really, really, truly cared about me. And now I know it's just, well, they're just not wired that way, or they can't show me that
Right.
kind of caring or emotion.
What I've heard recently around that same thing was sort of like when that happens. Oh, I'm wishing Kara was here right now because she is the teacher in Believe Crew and she remembers this kind of stuff. Like in our relationship, I see the book and then I'm like, "Hey, Kara, here's a good book." Like I read the first 3 chapters. Maybe you could read the rest. Let me know what it says. So I feel like I want her wording right now, but I just know that it's super important what you pointed out that when kids or I'm not even sure up to what age when we don't have acknowledgement, like that feeling existed, when that feeling hurt. I mean, right now I have to apologize or want to apologize to my oldest. When I was parenting at a young age and didn't know some of this stuff, today I would give my little guy a hug. and I would ask him about his feelings.
Mhm.
But with my oldest, I didn't know how to help him deal with his feelings. And so I was like, go to
Right.
your room until you get it worked out. And ultimately,
Mhm.
it doesn't necessarily help him, like
Talk through it. Yeah.
recognizing emotions. Yeah.
Mhm. You know what? I might have actually done the exact same thing because I have 2 girls, an older one and a younger one. The older one, I almost felt like she wasn't very vocal anyway. She was kind of quiet and shy. Um, and so she didn't ever, really show emotions. And I do remember times where I'm like, okay, just go to your room until you're like, ready to whatever. Or
Yeah.
but that's what my parents did. So I didn't know any different. And my other daughter, who's 15, well, she would have been 10 when I started doing the work, right? So she's going through the teenage years where I'm sitting down and talking to her. Okay, well, let's talk this through. Let's talk this through. Okay, how did that feel? That doesn't have anything about you. That bully that bullied you, that's their projection of what's going on inside of them. It has nothing to do with you. So I was actually able to talk her through a lot more stuff than I was ever able to my 18-year-old.
Yeah. What's coming up for me when you say this is there's a personality assessment. It's not really a personality assessment, but in those lanes. And it's called lifelanguages.com. It's not love languages. They have an assessment too, of course, but but in the life languages assessments, it's more of a language. And they talk about the language of action, the language of thinking, and the language of feeling. And I think what's coming up for me right now is that I feel like the language of action has had very high, like what we do matters more than who we are sometimes. So the language of action seems like it's a very well liked language. I don't know if that's important language. I don't know. There's a word I'm searching for. I can't find.
I think people feel, and it's not all people, of course, but there's a fair amount
Right,
of
right.
people, and it probably was me in the past too, is what you do makes who you are.
Yeah,
Like what you
yeah.
accomplish, how much money you make, all of this other stuff that, yes, it's great to make a lot of money, but they're putting their only worth onto that. So
Hmm.
that kind of what makes me think of when you say the action, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
you're
So we have
doing.
this language of action that's super important, and then we have the language of thinking, which is also talked about as super important. But what about that language of feeling? Like, has society
Mhm.
really embraced the language of feeling as having the same level of importance?
No, I believe that feelings are something that's kind of in our society. You don't talk about them. Like you have to, especially. I feel like males, boys. Like if you have feelings, if you cry, if you whatever, it's like you're weak or something. Like that's so just something that happens in our society. And then as you like suppress all of that, sometimes it just comes out as that big explosion in some kind of way.
Yeah.
Right. So we definitely need to, as a society, figure out a way to say that feelings are okay. My 15-year-olds like class, like the people her age range, because of COVID, I think that they missed these kids, they missed a very important time of learning how to communicate and work together and stuff like that. And the amount of kids that are like lashing out and doing some really not so great behavior or not knowing how to communicate with other kids, and they're just bullying each other or yelling at each other or whatever. They missed 2 years of interaction with other people, or could have been alone for 2 years because their parents were at work, while they were home doing school. And I think we're going to learn a lot from that as a society, and we're going to learn, okay, emotions are really important, and we need to teach kids how to deal with their emotions and actually be able to communicate instead of just pushing it down and suppressing all of it, because that's not helpful.
Well, and I think creating awareness to the fact that the feelings are already there. The feelings exist. We just haven't given them space. We haven't, because even in websites, when you use color evokes different emotions, different
It does.
feelings for different people. And they often say, blue is like trustworthy and loyal, and like doesn't
Mhm.
mean it is for everybody, but general rules of thumb
General
apply.
rule.
Like
Yeah.
you would use certain colors as you're designing certain things. And so the feelings have always been there. They've always been an extreme um, part of society. I just don't think that it's like for some reason, one language may be perceived as better than another, depending on what
Mhm.
industries we work in or the way we were raised. And
Yeah.
um, maybe our ancestors kind of helped us create the vision, the lens that we see things through. To And I think for mine, it was doing, it was the action, and then maybe thinking, right, depending on the ancestor and how I was raised, but
Mhm.
feelings not so much,
I think that's
especially in
is
business.
exactly like, even if I think about my dad, it was action, thinking, feeling, right?
Hmm.
I totally think we're on the same place because my dad was like, he was always doing stuff and stuff like, and one of the things I realized about myself is that I was one of those people I always had to do, 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 do. And so if I wasn't working on my business, I was doing something else. I was always doing something else and I couldn't just stop and be.
Space to feel, space to be.
Mhm.
Both are
That's
important.
an avoidance thing too, because
Hmm.
if you're not quiet and meditating or just quiet and sitting, then the feelings will never come up and you'll never have to deal with them. So,
Someone called me out on that a little over a year ago, that I didn't really like being alone. I didn't like sitting and thinking. And so that is something I've
mhm,
practiced over the last year, but I did not like it when I first heard that because I liked that I
mhm,
liked not being alone. I liked that I liked not being quiet, like, and
mhm,
so at first it takes, the kind of that curiosity of like, why do people say this? Why do they say that it's important to be able to be quiet or to be able to be comfortable being alone or to meditate?
mhm.
I was like, what's meditating? So, anyway, oh my goodness, it's been so good to have this conversation with you. And I feel like there's so many more directions that we could go in. But ultimately, when we started the podcast, we kind of wanted to leave listeners with this idea that if you could build the business, like, or if you could work through some of this stuff that almost anyone can, is there anything else that you feel has been left unsaid in that area?
Oh, geez. um, I guess every time you think that you can't, you can. Like, just tell yourself you can. One of the things that helped me was I started writing down positive things, right? Almost like a journal. You can say them out loud. Writing down maybe doesn't work for you. Maybe if you verbalize it, it works better for you. But once I started realizing how impactful that was, and I'm not the only one. Like, everybody knows about like writing down positivity and stuff like that. Um, Once I started writing down certain intentions I wanted for my business or goals, right? When I wrote them down, and then like every morning I would write down a positive thing, it changed the makeup of my brain in such a strong way. So if you're finding that you keep either wanting to quit or to give up, but ultimately you don't want to because you really want to succeed, but you're questioning whether or not you can, which in the first 15 years, I'm going to say 2000 times probably wanted to quit. I thought I wasn't good enough. Um, Once I found this really positive thing of um, writing down positivity and all of the wonderful things that happen in a day, or, I even have a folder right back there. I have a folder of every time someone puts a positive review out, I print it out and I put it in that folder. And, or if they just write an email back to me, not even a review, just a positive email, I put it in there. And sometimes I just pull it out and I just start reading. So it's like, look at how many lives you've impacted because you've helped other people run their business more effectively.
That's super powerful. There's a book, Dan Sullivan writes a book called The Gap and the Gain. And he talks about what happens in our brains when we're consistently looking at the gap between where we are and where we want to go versus the gain, where we've been and the progress that we've made from that perspective. And so it sounds like that's really what you started doing, and that created a shift for you in your brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look how far I've come. Because I'm
Mhm.
always constantly looking back, like, where was I 5 years ago? Wow, look how far I've come.
And the other thing that came up too when you were sharing a little bit here at the end is maybe this myth that entrepreneurs or business owners get in business and they like know, like it's because they're so confident that that's how they end up in business. And so I'm just curious just a little bit, how did you end up in business even though you had this 2000 times of like I'm not good enough, you still had like this little seed of something that created a desire to go, I guess I'm going to start a business.
Well, you're going back 22 years, so that's going to be a little harder question to answer. But to be honest, I had no idea what I was going to do with the business. 22 years ago, I didn't work on websites. I actually designed magazines. And I worked at a magazine
Wow.
publisher. And I had thought about that I wanted to maybe work on my own, but I didn't quite know how I was going to achieve it or accomplish it. And one day the owner of the company said, well, I know you want to do this. So I am giving you the push to make you do it. I'm laying you
Wow.
off. Now, I don't know if that was a nice way of saying I'm laying you off because I don't have enough work for you. She didn't have enough work for me. But she
Right.
said, all of the work that you've been doing for me in office, I'm going to hire you to do outside.
Mhm.
So I had right from the get go. I had like basically a part time job as a
Right.
freelance, graphic designer. So that was great. So then I just spent time building, 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 building. Now in 2010, the business shifted and changed. Like all the magazine stuff, because I was like designing multiple magazines at that point. In 2010, all of those magazines died
Mhm.
all in the same year. So I had to completely shift, and I used 2010 because it was January of 2010 where I lost January and February. I lost all my work. So I went from having basically a full time job, designing all of these things, to having nothing.
Wow.
Talk about scary. And I had to completely rebuild my business. And so I used 2010 to figure out what am I going to do when I grow up. And
Mhm.
I learned how to do website. I learned where I wanted to do it. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But I stuck to it. I learned how to do it and I evolved.
Mm.
So when 2011 came, I was run out the gate running. Like, and this is what I'm doing moving forward.
So during 2010, how many times did you think, I wonder if I should get a job?
Probably every day.
Mhm.
But
And yet there was a piece of you that knew,
yeah,
if I don't
well,
get a job, I need to reinvent myself. I need to pivot. Something needs
I
to
need to
change. I need
pivot.
to invest in myself in a new way.
Hmm. Yeah. Because, I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to have my own business is I didn't want to raise my kids. I didn't
Mhm.
want them to go to daycare. That was extremely
Mhm.
important to me. And for 22 years, I have worked out of this spot right here, like this
Wow.
house. That doesn't bother me. It was always okay. My kids grew up playing on the other side of this office. They were always coming in for the cuddles and doing all of that. So in 2010, I had a 6-year old and a 9-year old.
Mhm.
So they weren't old enough for me too. So what kept me going instead of just going, oh, I'm going to go to work, was them,
Right. Right.
right? Like my love for them and me wanting to be there for them was extremely important to me.
You weren't every day waking up and going, I want to be a business owner. I want to be an entrepreneur. I don't want a job. You were waking up every day going, should I get a job? But I really don't want to leave my girls. So I need to figure out what's another
Mm-hmm.
option. This is the reality of what the brain is doing and saying. To the outside perspective, it might not seem like that when entrepreneurs seem successful or seem like things are
Mm-hmm.
going well. It's the conversations in our head are not what somebody else might think they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But
Mm.
everything's changed now. I mean, they're older, they're grown up.
Mhm.
Um, so
So now you have to do it for you.
I'm doing it for me now. But I'm doing it for me, but I'm doing it for my clients because I know I can make an impact in
Mhm.
their lives and in their business.
Right.
So that impact in how I'm taking the stress off of them or helping support them, either it be their mindset or otherwise, helping in them with all the technology. Some people just can't handle technology. They don't
Mhm.
understand how it works. So me assisting them and helping them in that way is such a relief for them. And then they can go on and run their business and not have to
Mhm.
worry.
Well, what I hear you saying is that you working in your zone of genius, your gifts and talents, the gifts that you've been given, you're able to, through your business, do those things and be a help to others. Like, yes, it's for your clients, because obviously if it wasn't for our clients, we wouldn't show up. But at the same time, you're able to work in your gifts and talents. And the more you
Mhm.
work in your zone of genius, the more they can benefit from your gifts instead of,
Right,
and they can do what's their gifts, right? Like whenever we work in our gifts, it gives somebody else permission to work in theirs.
right.
Well, thank you, Amy. Thank you for this conversation. And
Thank you.
hopefully, someone from this podcast feels like it is possible for them to be the entrepreneur that they're called to be.
Absolutely.